Hey guys, I'm back with another video, and this one is called Uncovering the Scripture Geography. And this will be part one of probably, I don't know how many parts, but I'm going to try to break it up so it's not quite so long this time. But I think this will clear up a lot of stuff from my last video that I did on Who's Your Real Father. Once you see all this, you'll understand how I am coming to these conclusions. I hope so anyway. I remember when I was young, time and again, I'd ask myself, why did God choose this barren land in Israel as his holy land? And this is just kind of a funny spoof, but when you look at it, there's just nothing there. It's very, very barren. Now, we're told in Matthew 17:20, he said to them, "Because of your little faith, for truly I say to you, if you have the faith like a grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." Well, when you look at this verse, you're thinking, what is he talking about? The mountains are going to move. Well, when you look at the actual words he used a word for a mustard seed, sinapi, which is actually a Mediterranean region plant. So we're going to explore how the mountains really do move when you start really looking at the scriptures and you have a lot of faith. Also, then we see in Revelation 6:14, the sky vanished like a scroll that's being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. And we see that he actually did roll up a scroll in Luke 4:20-21. And he rolled up this scroll, and he gave it back to the attendant and sat down, and the eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. And he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." Another thing that happened when we look in Revelation 16:10, languages were changed, affecting what we perceive. The fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and its kingdom was plunged into darkness. People gnawed or devoured their tongues, which is languish, in anguish or work. Now the word for tongue is like glossa, and it's the language or dialect used by a particular people distinct from that of other nations. So what's really being said here is the languages were scrambled, and that affects a lot of things. Okay, let's look at another word in this verse. It says, "The fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and its kingdom was plunged into darkness," which means like to obscure or blind the people. People gnawed their tongues, which we just discussed. That it's glossa, that means they changed the languages. And in anguish we have, well, anguish is ponos, which is actually to weave or twist the languages. Okay, one thing I noticed when you go to Brown Driver Briggs etymology, it's kind of like Strong's, but yet it's more of an etymology of each word. You'll notice that there's all kinds of information, but at the very bottom it always says like a related word by Brown Driver Briggs or Strong's number, and I kept noticing this little thing that says of foreign origin. So a lot of the words that are used in the Old Testament are not of the Hebrew language or the Semitic language. They're of a foreign language. And I found particularly a lot of them are Latin, Spanish, some of them are Greek, some of them are German. It just depends on what word you're looking at. So they literally twisted all the languages and used all of them in order to deceive us. I know this is going to be difficult to see, but it literally happened. This is how bad they gnawed up the tongue. Okay, when you look at Genesis, you'll see that Abram was an Ivory, not a Hebrew, and we have it translated as Hebrew. And then the Judea were changed to Jews, and Israel was changed also. It's like they went through and just totally made things to appear as they're not really the way they are. I hope this becomes more clear as we go along. But you can kind of pause this and look at these three examples. And they tried to make the words sound a different way, like Yitzhak became Israel, and Judeam became Jews, and Ivory became Hebrew. And it's caused a lot of people to think that things are where they are when they're not. I'm going to explain that here in a few minutes. Okay, John gives us a real big heads up on the so-called Hebrew language. He's telling us that the Hebrew language is not what the original language was. In Revelation 16:16, he says, "And they gathered them together to the place called in Hebrew Megiddo." Okay, well, they have it translated as Hebrew here. Okay, it's actually this word right here, which is Hebraistry. The H is silent, and it's Ibraistry or Hebraistry. And he's given us a heads up and a clue as to what they've done with the languages. Because Hebraistry or Ibraistry is not the language that the Old Testament was written in, but it's a Chaldee language, and it comes from the Phoenicians. And this is very important because everybody thinks, oh, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and that's the original language. No, it's not. John has given us a heads up that that is not the original language. Okay, here's a bigger explanation here. The actual word that John used was Hebraistry, because the H would be silent. And an Eber person would be a person from the Iberian Peninsula, or it can also mean the region from beyond. And there I copied the thing that says it, however, it's not what is written in the Old Testament. So he was giving us clues as to where to look. Here's a massive explanation of how the changes in the names affect what we perceive today. Okay, if Judea is a part of Edom, then it's in Italy. It's not in the Middle East. Now, how can I know that? All right, let's look at Finney the Elder in 78 CE. In his work, The Natural History book, he wrote that Greater Judea, or the Provincial Judea incorporates Samaria and Idumea into the expanded territory. The part of Judea adjoining Syria is called Galilee, and that is next to Arabia and Egypt. Peri is covered with rugged mountains and is separated from the other parts of Judea by river Jordan. Okay, now if this is correct, when we look at this word right here, this Idumea, and you go look up what an Idumean is. Well, an Idumean is an Edomite, and it's related to Edom or the Edomites. Okay, well, we know that Edom and Rome are the exact same words. So this whole thing would indicate that the Judeans are part of the Edomite kingdom of Rome. So they cannot be in the Middle East. This is just how intense all this gets, and it's very, very confusing. And a lot of places where you see Syria, it is mistranslated. It's Syria. And there was an area of Syria right outside of Rome also. I'm going to show that later on when I get into the part about actual places this is talking about. Okay, this is your Iberian or Iberistri script, the original. The origin of the language is unknown. Although Iberian ceased to be written in the 1st century AD, it may have survived in some areas until the Visigoth period, according to Mendez Pidal. And you have 3 different scripts that have remained from the Iberian language that they found. Now, all 3 of these were replaced by Latin-based languages, or the Iberian Romance languages. So this basically morphed into your Latin-based languages. Northeastern Iberian language is the language that was primarily used. It's a Gaulish language that came from Incherim, or in France, right on the border of Spain and France, what we call Spain and France today. And they were known for their own language, which was from the Gauls. It developed under the Indo-European roots, and for example, loss of or any diagnostic features as the script standardly used to write the Koine Greek throughout. So this is where we got the Koine Greek from. It was actually not from the Middle East, it was from Spain. And you'll notice that the Chi-Rho for Jesus Christ actually matches this writing. I thought that was very interesting too. And primarily, the Catholic Church basically started in Spain and Italy, not the Middle East. Some of the ancient Hebrew is pretty amazing, and it can clear up some of the mistranslations we have in the scriptures and reveal actual locations. Like Adam and Edom and Rome are all the same word in ancient Hebrew. And I'm pretty sure they don't want us to know about this little secret, but it is there. If you go off online to the Zohar online and the Talmud and all that you can read in English, it's in there too. They know it, and they know that Edom is actually Rome. Now, the Iberians are the Ibers, and were a set of people that the Greek and Roman sources knew of. and they identified them all, like Strabo and all the Herodotus. I can't pronounce that very well, but they all named them as that continent. Um, and they were there at least the 6th century BC. The Roman sources also used the term Hispanic to refer to the Iberians. Now, when we look at Genesis 14:13, and there came one that had escaped and told Abram, the Hebrew is what we have in English. But when you actually click on it in Strong's, you'll see it says Ivory, the descendant of the Ibers, or an Iberite. And an Iberite or an Ivory was a Spanish person. It can also mean, when you look at Brown Driver Briggs and you look at the definition, it means in English one from beyond, which is interesting too. And it's a Latin-based word. It's not from the Semitic languages. And Spanish, interesting enough, is span and ish, and it actually means hidden man, like somebody that's hidden. So that goes along with that too. Others derive the word from the Phoenician span, meaning hidden, and make it indicate a hidden or remote or far distant land. And ish in Hebrew is man, or hombre would be the official term. Okay, another interesting thing about the word Abram is it means exalted father. And in Genesis 12:6 we see Abram, or the exalted father, passed through the land to the place called Shechem, as far as the timber tree of Moreh. And at that time, and the Kenites were in the land. And then in Genesis 14:13, and one who had escaped came and informed Abram the Ivory, for he dwelt by the timber trees of Mamre, the Amorite brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aner, and they had a covenant with Abram. All right, when I went online, I started looking for this tree. And this tree is only found in Spain and Italy. Let's see if I can point this out. Right here on the border of France and northern Spain is where there are some of the trees. Then over here on the shoulder of Italy, and then down here on the island off of Italy. And that's the only 3 places this tree grows. I started looking at the evidence, okay? This is the Museum Beth Shean Synagogue mosaic floor. And this is just how easy it would be to trick people into believing that something was there that wasn't there to begin with. I mean, this is sitting in a museum now, and it's been totally moved. So it was easily moved from one place to another. And that was something I wanted to point out in this, is I've shown some examples of the evidence they have that everything happened in the Middle East, and it's very, very flimsy when you really get to looking at it. That's the excavation area at Tel Beth Shean. That's where they say that floor came from, and that's 1937. What I'm going to do with this presentation, I'm going to show you that the so-called chosen ones are none other than the Italians. Wikipedia tells us that the Jewish community in Rome is likely one of the oldest continuous Jewish communities in the world, existing from classical times through today. Large numbers of Jews lived in Rome, even during the late Roman Republic period around 150 BC. They were largely Greek-speaking. Emperor Augustus, who was, according to the bibliographer Suetonius, thought that the Jews fasted on the Sabbath. Julius Caesar was known as a great friend to the Jews, and they were among the first to mourn his assassination. In Rome, the community was highly organized and presided over the heads of the Archelites. The Jews maintained in Rome several synagogues whose spiritual leader was called the Archsynagogus. Their tombstones, mostly in Greek, with a few in Aramaic or Latin, were decorated with the ritual menorah, the seven-branched candelabra. And when I went searching, I couldn't find evidence of a Jewish settlement or nation in the Middle East on the historical maps until about 1300 AD, and tons of evidence of the Jewish people being from Italy. I feel that it's probably their origin. Also, the oldest Jewish synagogue ever found is also in Italy. Jewish religion appears to be a spin-off of the worship of Jupiter, who was pronounced Yahweh. The Latin Yahweh would be pronounced almost identical to what the modern scholars say Yahweh is from the Old Testament. Thus, they have relegated the Almighty Jehovah of all the Bible to be nothing more than a pagan Rome and God, devil, Zeus, Jupiter, or Jehovah, whatever you want to call him. And they have it spelled in most of the books as Jove, but the I we know was changed to J in around the 1400s, and it was pronounced that J or I was pronounced like a Y, the O, ah, and the V, a wah, and EH, so it would come out sounding like Yahweh. And I don't know how scholars have missed this, but I have proved it out beyond a shadow of a doubt. This will be part one of probably about 6 videos, because this is extensive. I think I have around 600 slides now proving that this is correct. Okay, this is a map of the world by the Romans at the end of Tiberius's rule, which would be like 14 to 37 CE. And you can see here, this was actually generated by a Roman geographer, Pompeius Mela, and it's on ink and parchment. Now, when you look at this map, you can take here and look, and what do you see here? You see Syria in the Middle East. You do not see the Israel like we see today. And you'll notice other things like Cyrene, Adrius, Gades. And when I go through and show you more, you can get a sense for this is what they were looking at way back then. Now, there are a lot of remake maps, and that was one thing I found when I was looking for all this stuff, is that there are maps that have been remade and remade and remade to the point that everything has been totally distorted. So what I looked for was actual ancient maps, not ones that are just remakes to tell us where everything was, but ones that they made themselves during that time period. Now this is the Tabula Penterig. I can't pronounce that word. Most people call it just the Tabula. But this was made under the direction of Marcus Vespasian Agrippa, the Roman general that was friends with the Emperor Augusta. After Agrippa's death in 12 BC, that map was engraved on a marble and put on display at the Porticus Vespasian in the Campus Agrippae in Rome, close to one of the major buildings. Now, they think the original source for this is Vespasian Agrippa, but this is like a remake, was revised in the 4th or early 5th century, and it shows the city of Constantinople, which was founded in 328. And this is a very interesting map too, because you see how long and skinny it is. Okay, we're going to look at a little section right in this area right here. Okay, I pulled it in red here so you can see what area that I blew up. And what all do we see right here? This would be, right in this area right here would be where Israel is today. And we have nothing that says Israel, Jerusalem, none of that. We have Antiochia, you can see it right there, Antiochia, and Syria right there. Then we have, down here, we have Syria, Arabia below it. We have Damascus or Damascus, or whatever that is, and then Palestina there. And we don't see any of the stuff that we are told is right here today. And to me, this is massive proof, because these are the really old stuff. These are not just remakes to tell you what happened. They're actually things that were done back then. And that's what I kept looking for, to find these things, so that I didn't just use remakes. And I found one I thought was really good, and then I found out that it was all a remake. So you have to be really careful about what you're looking at on the internet, because with the technology today, they could make us believe, anything they wanted to. Okay, here is looking at another section of that, and you can probably guess what this is just by all these little waterways, but this is Egypto, and that is Egypt, and this would be where the mouth of the Nile comes out. And I thought it was very interesting, because right across from there, you see Hermon and Pergamo. So their concept of what was actually there is totally different than what we think of today. Okay, this is another one that was the 4th century. And it's really strange, because what we see over here is not Israel again, it's Oriens instead. And I took the map and took this part and blew it up so you could see it there. Now, when you look here, again, you'll see that word Egyptos right there. Instead of, there's no Mitzrayim like we have in the Old Testament. Mitzrayim, I think, is a total mistranslation. And here's another one. This is 1045 AD, and we're still seeing Palestina in that area. And then here's the Nile Delta, and we see Syria too. Now they've added Phoenice right there. But it's pretty interesting and pretty telling that a lot of the things that we're told are there are not on these ancient maps. Okay, this is the time period when we start seeing Jerusalem added. This is around 1300 AD, and you'll see it right here. And Iridia would be the I up until about, I think it was like 1400. There was no J's. This would have been Judia in modern terms, but it's spelled Iudia. So this is about the time period when they started adding Jerusalem and Israel into this area. The Spanish for Yahweh would have been Yehovah, okay? And you can see here on this statue of Jupiter, it literally has that written in Latin, the Yehovah. This is the Jewish deity, is one and the same as what is in the Old Testament, and it was actually considered Jupiter of the Roman Empire. Okay, in Acts 14:12, we have this thing that says, and they called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker. And the priest of Jupiter, which was before their city, brought oxen and garlands into the gate, and would have done sacrifice with the people. Okay, then in verse 14, which the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of, they rent their clothes and ran in among the people, crying out, and saying, Sirs, why do you do these things? We also are men of fashions with you, and preach unto you, ye should turn from these vanities unto the living God, which made heaven and earth, and the sea, and all things therein, who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their ways. Okay, there's actually in Rome this plaque that you see Marcus Aurelius sacrificing outside the temple there. And this coin I'm showing you is a silver tetradrachm of Alexander the Great, showing him wearing the horns of the ram god Jupiter. So Luke is also telling us a whole lot in Acts 14:12. It's pretty interesting. The actual scriptures themselves will tell us where things are happening. But we have to be able to throw out cognitive dissonance, the things that we have been ingrained to believe over the years from the time we were little. Because if you're looking in one place and all the evidence is in another place, it makes it difficult to see. It's like you're looking at all the trees in the forest and you can't see something for all the trees in the way. Well, those trees are the little things that we've been put in our mind over the years by different teachers and stuff. Here's an example. Okay, this is Jupiter Ammon. It's an artifact of the territory which is in Rome, Italy. Okay, well, Ammon is all in the scriptures, but we don't see this as what it is because our minds are not looking in that area. We've been taught to focus on the Middle East, okay? Deuteronomy 2:19. And when you approach the territory of the people of Ammon, well, there's Ammon sculptures from 1st century AD. Do not harass them or contend with them, for I will not give you any of the land of the people of Ammon as a possession, because I have given it to the sons of Lot for a possession. So this land where this deity, Jupiter Ammon, is Lot's people. That's their possession. But we won't see that because we're not even looking in the right direction. Here are two more scriptures that point us to this same deity. Okay, Judges 11:27. So I have not sinned against you, but you are doing me evil by fighting against me. Let Yahuwah the judge judge today between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. Okay, then in Deuteronomy 33:13, and Joseph, he said, or Joseph, blessed of Yahuwah is his land, and with the choicest from the heavens, and with dew and deep lying beneath, and the deep lying beneath. Now, in verse 17, we're described about Ammon. His splendor is like a firstborn bull, and his horns are like the horns of a wild ox. And them he pushes the people to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. Okay, when you see this sculpture from 1st century AD of Jupiter Ammon, you can see that he does have the horns of a bull or a wild ox. And I put a picture there below so you can kind of compare. Now, it was said that this was Zeus Ammon, and there are different, like Jupiter Ammon, Zeus Ammon. The archaeologists have named them different things, but I think it's just Ammon, basically. He's part man, part beast. His head sits on a herm support, that little bustule thing that's common for the Romans. He was a deity of the early classical origins. His facial features are human, but his ears and the coils of his ram's horns are bestial looking. The hair looks like old-fashioned style, and he has it rolled back where his locks are over. The forehead is combed flat, and there's like a band around his head to hold his bangs down. Let's see what else about him. This was very common in 1st century. They used it in their gardens, their domestic interiors, and it was an important religious figure for the Romans, and which are actually the so-called chosen ones. He was deity of Alexander the Great, and actually Alexander the Great actually did some of his statues wearing the horns of Ammon. This particular piece came from 1st century AD, and it was found in Rome, Italy. But I think it's very interesting that there is so much we can see when we let down all that we've been taught and just look at the facts and what is there. Okay, now let's look at Genesis 14:13. And let's look at it with fresh eyes, without our cognitive dissonance, and what is really there when we do a mechanical breakdown. I took the verses and I took word for word and broke down the Hebrew and looked at each word. And it says, and he came, the escaped or refugee, and he spoke to Abraham, which means the father of the multitude, the Ibri, or the one from beyond, and he is to dwell in the house of the great tree, or the Elon, from Mara and the Aharam, and my brother Eshcol, and my brother Aner, and they are the Baali, which means the possessors of, the alliance with Abram, which is the father of the multitude. Okay? Well, there's a whole lot going on in that sentence. For one thing, Aharah is actually Arabic, and it's the romanicized version of Aharah, and it means the red one. It's a place or fortress or complex, and this literally means the one of Granada, which is a famous place in Spain. Now, I showed this on the map so you can see where that's at. Interesting enough, this is the same country where the timber trees are found. And the word Mara is also a Spanish word, and it can mean Mary. So it could mean Mary, the one of Granada, if you really want to break it down even further. So you can start finding these locations by looking at these word for word, what they literally mean, and finding out what language they came from, and then looking at it from that perspective. So this whole thing is talking about a place in Spain in Genesis 14:13, but most people will never see that because they don't understand what has happened to the scriptures. Okay, we can also find Mara on the map. Mara is a municipality of the province of Zaragoza, Aragon, Spain. And it's very interesting when you look at that and you start looking, it was actually, back in the 1st century, Caesarea Augusta. And it's where the census went out. And very interesting enough, too, also, is check this out. Look at the shield for it. It actually has the timber tree on it. It's the same area where the timber tree, where I showed you in the other slide, where it grows. So all this is interconnected, and you can't see it until you start seeing the language changes and you look at those words that say of foreign origin. Once you see those, then it becomes very clear. Okay, here's another one I found. So Abram left as Yahuwah had commanded, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. And actually, when you look at the Hebrew on it, it's Charan. And Charan, Makura, is in Spain. It's right here where this big star is. And it means the mountaineer. And it's very close to where all the trees were, too. Same area. Okay, now here's Spain. Nahar, I guess, is a better way to pronounce it. My Spanish it's been so many years since I took Spanish, so I'm going to butcher some of this. And Yehoshua said to all the people, "Thus says Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, long ago your fathers dwelt beyond the river. Terah, the father of Abram, and the father of Nahar, they served the mighty ones." Well, you have Nahar, Spain. All these words are Spanish, and the J in Spanish makes it an H sound. Now, the truth of the matter is that all this happened in Spain and Italy, not the Middle East as we've been told. Okay, I wanted to show you this some more about the. It says in Genesis 12:6, and Abram, or the exalted father, passed through the land at the place of Shechem as far as the timber tree of Morah. Okay, the timber tree was up here in this little area where I've got a circle. And at that time, the Canaanites were in the land. So apparently the Canaanites were in this area. And the one who had escaped came and informed Abraham the Ivory, for he dwelt by the timber trees of Mamre in the Amorite, brother of Ishmael and brother of Aner, and they had a covenant with Abram. Okay. I won't say his name right. Jacobich suggests that when Jesus went to the Gadarenes, that he was traveling to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, but in fact traveled to Spain. Okay, now the truth is, this is where they were. The Gospels record a stormy sea journey to a mysterious place called the land of the Gadarenes. And that's recorded in Matthew 8, in Mark 5, and Luke 8. And this area is off of Spain. It's also known for storms. And I'm going to show you even further on that too. This is very involved, what I'm showing y'all this time. So just hang in there and just keep looking and keep listening, and you'll see it eventually. Okay, this one shows, see that Iberius? It shows the region of the Iberius River. And if you look right over here, you'll see Caesar Augustus. The Greeks called this river Iber, and the Romans called it Hyber or Iberus Frumen, leading to the current name, the Iberian Peninsula. I'm just showing y'all proof after proof because I don't want you to think I'm just trying to make something up. When I first saw this, I was flipping out. I was like, wow. Okay, we get into the word for Egypt in Hebrew. And you'll see right here, let me pull this little thing. You've got Mitzrayim, okay? Actually, there is other words in Hebrew for Egypt, okay? Egypto and Egyptos, not Mitzrayim. So Mitzrayim is not Egypt. And it says in Hosea 13:4, but I am Yahuwah your Elohim since the land of Mitzrayim. And Mitzrayim actually means double straits, a narrow body of land with double straits. And an Elohim besides me you shall not know, for there are no Savior besides me. Okay, so where in the heck is Mitzrayim if it's not Egypt? I mean, this is about as clear as it comes. You can see here, this is Egypt in Hebrew, and this is Egypt in Hebrew. And so what is Mitzrayim? Okay, thanks to TV programming, this is what our mental picture of Egypt is. And the so-called Egypt as a country today, but the word Egypt is not actually in the scriptures. The English name Egypt is derived from the ancient Greek Egyptos and the modern French Egypte or Egyptus and Egitto in Italian. The root word of Mitzrayim is not Egypt, and according to Brown, Drivers, and Briggs, the meaning is to border, to shut, or limit, and the sources claim the etymology of the word Mitzrayim lies in Tasar or Tasar, and the verb means to bind, tie up, restrict, narrow, be cramped, straits, distress, narrow or tightness, and most people agree that it is a narrow place with double straits surrounded by water, since Mem is water in ancient Hebrew. Okay, so let's look here. Okay, The Suez Canal is not a strait, and definitely not a double strait. Okay, the only place we see double straits is the narrow body of land of Italy, and you've got two straits on both sides. And I believe that Mizraim is surrounded by water, which is part of the word, so I think it really means a narrow body of land surrounded by water with double straits, which the only place on the planet that fits that is Italy. And this is just another card I did on it. When I'm studying, I do 100 million cards because that's how I study it. I use them like index cards. But you can see that this is clearly Mitzrayim is not Egypt in Hebrew. This word does not match that word, and it should. Thanks to TV program and our mental picture of Pharaoh is also messed up. Pharaoh means great house. It comes from a different word. It's not Pharaoh, but they have it translated as Pharaoh. But since we have all this really nifty TV programming and all, this is what our mental picture of Pharaoh became. Here you go here. They think it came from hieroglyphics, and it actually means great house. It doesn't mean a pharaoh. So this is another thing to consider when we're looking at that. And you can see here it looks like a house in a big stick. Leader house. Okay. Another thing nobody's considered is the pyramids are not made of straw bricks, and we're definitely told in Exodus 5:7, you are no longer to give the people straw to make bricks as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves, and lay on them the required amount of bricks which they made before, but do not diminish it, for they are idle. That is why they cry out, saying, let us go and slaughter to our Elohim. And you can see here, this is the pyramids, and that is definitely not straw bricks. So where do we find straw bricks? Etruscan, Tour, Tuscany Valley, in Italy. This is the straw and mud bricks were made in Spain and Italy. The Etruscan cities, which often sat on the hilltops, became walled from about the 8th century, first in mud bricks and then often in stone. But they're primarily, the ancient ones were all made out of the straw bricks. This is a house, the House of Sturgeon in Pompeii. And notice how Improva is still there, yet it's covered with twigs. You can still make out where the twigs are in it. And here's some more. It's kind of an adobe, which was one of the first materials ancient humans used to create buildings dating back to the 8th century BC, which would fit perfectly with the scriptures. You can see a lot of them in the Santa Fe, New Mexico, in that area. A lot of the Spanish brought that, building the straw bricks, adobe structures with them to the United States. Okay, so if this all happened in Italy, then we have to have the bulrushes where they hid Moses. Okay, so we go and look at the Cane River in Sicily, and it is covered in papyrus reeds, just like in the oh shoot, I'm losing my train of thought here. Just like in Egypt, where they have all the papyrus reeds and they think Moses was put in the little basket. And also on that island is Mount Etna, which puts off the sulfur and the bitumen and the coal. Now let's look at the scripture and what does it say? When she could hide him no longer, she took him in a basket made of bulrushes. Okay, these are Sicily bulrushes. And dabbed it with bitumen. Okay, there's bitumen there. And pitch. And she placed a child in it and placed it among the reeds by the river bank. And that's the Cane River. And the daughter of Pharaoh, or the great house, the daughter of the great house came down to bathe at the river, and while her young women walked beside the river, she saw the basket among the reeds, and sent her servant woman, and she took it. This area fits perfectly to what we're seeing. The bitumen's there, everything is there. Now this is where it starts getting amazing. Okay, in Psalm 68 it says, "When the Almighty scattered the kings of the land, it snowed on Zalmon, the black mountain," is what it means in Hebrew. And Zalmon again, here the silent letter T. And Etna, which is in that same region, the summit in Italy is called Solomon Mountain Summit. And it does snow on it at times. So the name in the scriptures from Psalm 68 matches the mountain of Etna. And also, when we look at it, at this word, it means thorny, okay? And the Etna summit in Italy is called the Solomon Mountain, and it is covered in thorns. It has thorn bushes, prickly pears. In fact, when hikers go up to this mountain, they complain about the thorns. Are so many they get stuck, and so it actually fits the name of the mountain also. Now in Exodus 13:21 and 22, we're told that Yahuwah went before them by day as a column of cloud to lead the way, and by night as a column of fire to give them light, so as to go by the day and night. The column of the cloud did not cease by day, nor did the column of fire by night before the people. All right. Well, Stromboli, which is off the Italian coast, has been called by the Romans the lighthouse of the Mediterranean. Locals refer to the volcano as Idu, a dialect of word meaning hymn. In the daytime, it's visible as a plume of gas that looks like smoke, and at night, it is a fiery red fountain of shooting upwards. And that's why they called it the lighthouse of the Mediterranean. So this also fits what Moses would have been following. Okay, in Exodus 7:19, we're told Yahuwah said to Moses, "Draw from the water and say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch it out your hand over the waters of the double straits, and over the rivers, their canals, and their ponds, and their pools of water, so that they may become blood, and there shall be blood throughout all the land of the double straits, even the vessels of wood and the vessels of stone. Well, you'll see that Italy is covered in ponds and pools and canals. That also matches. Okay, this one really got me. There's a mountain, and I'm not even going to try, I guess I should. Montega Spatica. If you're Italian, please forgive me. But it's Split Mountain in Gaetia, Italy. Okay? And it's on the Gulf of Gaetia. You can see here Gaetia. And it's about 120 kilometers from Rome and about 80 kilometers from Naples. A chapel was built in one of these fissures of the mountain, and this mountain was split into two parts. Gaetia means to watch, guard, or take care. Now, what is very curious about that is that there's a legend involving this mountain. And according to the legend, it's believed that the rock split at the death of Jesus, and he touched the rock, and it said if true the rock became liquid, and he spoke and the liquefied and gave way to an imprint of his hand, and you can put your fingers into the imprint today. Now, I'm not sure if it happened then or not, but I have a feeling that that happened way back, even further back, because it says Moses lifted his hand, struck the rock twice with his rod, and much water came out, and the congregation and their livestock drank. Well, it's very interesting where this rock splits at the very top, or this mountain, there is fresh water that goes down to this unusual looking pool with fresh water. And now it is in Matthew 27:45 through 51, and behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. So that could have been also how they get this legend of the rock splitting. Because I'm going to prove that I think he died in Italy. Okay, let's see how this fits with the geography and what we're seeing here. In Numbers 20:14, and Moshe sent messengers from, and that would actually be sanctuary, to the sovereign of Edom or Rome. This is what your brother Israel said. You know all the hardship that has befallen us, that our fathers went down to where? They went down to the double straits, the Mitzrayim. And we dwelt in the double straits a long time. And the Mitzrayites are the double straight ones, the ones from this area. And this is also could play into like the Mithraism that you see in the Roman mystery religion, was also in this region. And we cried out to Yahuwah, and he heard our voice, and sent the messenger, and brought us up out of the double straits. And see, we are in, and it's in your English translation, it says Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. Okay, I looked at that in a translation up here, and it says we are in the sanctuary of a city on the edge of your border. Okay, so they were on the edge of Edom or Rome. All right, and we shall not pass through your fields or vineyards. Okay, there are tons of fields and vineyards right in there. There always has been. Nor drink water from your wells. We shall go along the sovereign's highway, and we shall not turn aside to the right or the left until we have passed over your border. But Edom or Rome said to him, you do not pass over through me, lest I come out against you with the sword. And the children of Israel said to him, we shall go by the highway, and if I or my livestock drink any of your water, then I shall pay for it. Let me only pass on foot without a word. And he said, do not pass over, and Edom Aram came out against them with many men and with a strong hand. So when Edom Aram refused to let Israel pass through their border, Israel turned away from him. So they came from the double straits, where they were oppressed or badly treated, went up the coast. This is where he split the rock right before this, and they were on the border of Rome. So it fits perfectly with what we see the actual text says. We're told in Genesis 12:11 when Abram, when he was close to entering the double straits, he was talking to Sarah, his wife. See, I know that you're a beautiful woman to look at. Okay, well, I believe was probably Ivory, which means which they have translated as Hebrew in English. And there is a Mount Ivory right here on Sicily that is close to the strait. And this structure right here is Mount Etna, which would be Yahuwah's mountain that's all covered in thorns. And you can see they even have a dolmen altar that sits right about here. And that, to me, when I see these, I think of the altar places in the Old Testament where it was altars made of uncut stones. And this is the pool at the base of that mountain. Okay, we're told in Isaiah 19:19, in that day there will be an altar to Yahuwah in the midst of the land of the double straits, and a standing pillar near its border to Yahuwah. Okay, well, we have right there at the Vatican, we have a standing pillar that has been there the whole time. So that would, to me, also indicates that this is the land of the double straits, not Egypt. I think 2 Kings 18:31 is talking about Matero, which is one of the oldest communities inhabited in the world. And the dwellers invested a lot of energy in building cisterns and systems of water channels. Of the Sassi stones, Petra, rock of Matera. Other people say that it comes from the word Mata, which means rock, and Metatron, which means sky full of stars. And it has an amazing view at night from the Sassi. During the Roman period, the city was called Matera. Other people called it the city Mater, or Mother Earth. It's one of the third oldest cities in the world, they think. Okay, when you look at 2 Kings 18:31, do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus said the sovereign of Ashur, make peace with me by a present, and come out to me, and let each of you eat of his own vine, and each of his own fig tree. Each of you drink the waters of his own cistern, until I come. Then I will take you away to the land like your own land, a land of grain, new wine, a land of bread, vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey, and live and do not die. But do not listen to Hezekiah when he misleads you, saying, Yahuwah shall deliver us. Where are the mighty ones of Hamath, the fortress, and Arpad, the comfort or support? Where are the mighty ones of Sariame, the two Serapis, are the city of books, and the Henna, the troubling, and the Ewa, the ruin? Did they deliver Samaria or Shamaron? did they deliver Shemaron from my hand? Who among the mighty ones of the lands have delivered their land out of my hand, that Yahuwah should deliver Jerusalem from my hand? But the people were silent and did not answer him a word. And the command of the sovereign says, do not answer him. And Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was over the household of Shavah, the scribe, and Joha, the son of Asphat, and the recorder came to Hezekiah, and their garments were torn, and they reported to him the words of Raspagel, the chief cupbearer. So I think what this is talking about with the city of Cisterines had to be Matera, Italy. And there's no other place on the world that has more grain, wine, vineyards, olive trees, and honey than Italy, because they're known for all those things. We're told the presence of the Jews on the Italian peninsula can be traced back as far as 200 BC during the late Roman Republic period. Now I'm going to prove that it goes way further back than that, all the way to 9th century BC. There are about 30,000 Jews living in Italy today, and they form a thriving community, which is concentrated in 5 major cities of Rome, Milan, Turin, Florence, and Leghorn. Interest in Jewish culture is widespread among the wider Italian population, through knowledge about Judaism is often quite limited. Kosher food is available in the main cities, and they have a large community. The representative body of the Italian Jewry is the Union del Camata Ibrati Italian, the Union of the Italian Jewish Community. The Italian affiliate of the World Jewish Congress is there. Okay? In Isaiah 14:18, we're told, in that day 5 cities in the land of the double straits shall speak the language of Canaan, and swear by Yahuwah of hosts. One is called the city of destruction. Well, Herculaneum, Italy. Herculaneum means city of destruction. And there are 5 cities that speak the Canaanite language. The only living Canaanite language alive today is Hebrew. And this exactly fits. In Exodus 33:3, we're told, go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up among you, lest I can consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people. Well, when you think milk and honey, Italy has to come to mind, because it's the land of cheeses, lattes, and honey. The Italian honeybee is thought to originate in the from the continental part of Italy, south of the Alps and north of Sicily. The subspecies may have survived the last ice age in Italy. It is genetically a different subspecies from that of the Iberian Peninsula and from Sicily. It is the most widely distributed of all honeybees and has proven adaptable to most climates, from subtropical to cool temperatures, but it is less successful in humid tropical regions. Italian honeybees that originate from the Ligurian Alp in northern Italy are often referred to as a Ligurian bee. Now, this is some of the most sought-after honey in the entire world, to be honest. Some of the most expensive honey you'll ever buy. And their cheeses and their lattes and milk products are also huge. Okay, let's talk about olives for a second. What we have labeled as Israel is not where olives came from. The olive known as the botanical name Olea europea, meaning European olive, is a species of small trees in the family of Oleae. They're found traditionally in the Mediterranean basin. Fossil evidence, now this is going back on their timeline on science, is 20 to 40 million years ago in the Oligocene in what is now corresponding to Italy and the eastern Mediterranean basin, which would be like France and Spain also. Israeli farmers raise not only native varieties, but they also select varieties of Spanish, Italian, and Greek olives. Olives were first domesticated 7,000 years ago in Israel, so they've only been around there, and they were only domesticated, which means they were brought there and planted. Okay, let's look at how it's described in Deuteronomy 8, starting in verse 7, about what kind of land that Moses and them were being brought into. For Yahuwah your Elohim is bringing you into a good land, a land of streams, of water, of fountains and springs that flows out of the valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land in which you will eat bread without scarcity, and which you do not lack at all, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you dig copper. Now, none of that really fits Israel because they have to irrigate everything, and like I showed you in the first slide, it's very barren, most of it, and there's not a lot of these things are just not there. And they had to be brought in and planted and cultivated and irrigated to grow. So we can see from this that where they're being taken is not what we have labeled as Israel today. The next slide will show you how far all this actually goes. I mean, I think that Italy was just the starting stomping ground from the double straits. And the stone altars and palm trees that are mentioned in the Old Testament are also in Sicily. Exodus 16:1, they set out from Elim the palm tree, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between the palm trees and the thorny, the Sinai. So it would be between these palm trees and Sinai, which is the Mount Etna, the thorny mountain, on the 15th day of the second renewal, after going out of the land of the double straits. And when you look at Exodus 20:25, if you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewed stones, for if you wield your tool on it, you profane it. And there are a bunch of these dolmens, altars, all scattered about, that are made out of unhewed stones. Now see, that one's been propped up by some cinder blocks. I guess they're afraid it's going to fall in or something. And this is one of the native palm trees to Sicily. But it's real interesting because these fall real close to Sinai, to the thorny mountain with the that's called Etna today. And here's just another picture of one in Sicily. And they were in every place where I caused my name to be remembered. They have these there for, and offering your sheep and cattle in every place. So you see these dotted all throughout Europe. Shaprod is the Hebrew name for Spain. Thus the Jewish people living in Spain and the Iberian Peninsula became as Shaparim. The earliest recorded Jewish settlement in Spain dated back to the 3rd century, and the Jews may have been living in Spain since the First Temple period. King Solomon's tax collector was said to have lived the end of his life there. And one of the reasons I think for that is because this was considered like one whole area, not separate like we have it today. And they produced the Torah scholars, the scientists, the financiers, thought leaders, and it's still being studied today. Isaac Abravanel, Nachmanides and Maimonides and others. The Jews in Shaprod developed their own language, and it is called Ladino, which is the Judo-Spanish language. And you'll find the word for Spain is literally in the Old Testament. Okay, here's another thing I found. The lily is native flower of Italy and the national flower, and you can't find it any indigenous to Israel at all. In Solomon, Song of Solomon, it's like 2:1-2. I am the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valleys, like a lily among the thorns. So is my love among the daughters. And the Son of Man gave us something to think about with that. He said, consider the lilies, how they grow, how they neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. So he's telling you there were lilies around. And there are no lilies, were not indigenous to Israel. And the word used here is Cronon, and that is a specific lily to Italy. And this is a picture of it right here. And this is interesting too. There are over 50 indigenous sheep and breeds to Italy and Spain, and what we have labeled as Israel today has one breed of sheep, and that's it, the Aswazi sheep. And sheep and goats are all through the scriptures, like Leviticus 1:10. And if his offering is of the flock, from the sheep or from the goats, as an ascending offering, let him bring a male, a perfect one. And they're just not found in the numbers. This is Madrid. They still run the sheep straight down through the middle of Madrid. And Mount Tabor, the Bardonisa, Italy, is actually, Tabor is found in Italy. North and south you have created them. Tabor and Hermon, rejoice in your name. You have a mighty arm, and your hand is strong, and your right hand exalted. Mount Tabor is a hill in Raconti, March, Italy, and it's also called the Hill of Infinity because it's described as a site of spiritual epiphany in Giacomo Leopardi's famous poem. So this is actually where I would think Tabor is right here. This is a map showing the origin of sheep, and you can tell, I mean, it's just like they're just huge, all in this area. But down here, you've only got one. And it says in Genesis 4:2, and again she bore his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of the sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. And then in Genesis 29:2, and he looked, and he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered, and the stone of the well's mouth was large. And Job 1:3, he possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camel, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 female donkeys, and many servants. So this man was the greatest of all the people in the East. And I believe this is speaking of the area of Spain, because they also had donkeys, and they had the oxen, and some camels. And the camels came from mostly down through this, because this was very, very small area to go across from Africa to Spain. And this is interesting. Okay, this is a burial plaque that was found in Venosa, Italy, and it's a shofar is depicted in an old burial plaque from the Jewish catacombs in Italy, along with other ritual objects once used in the Jerusalem temple, including the 7-branched lampstand menorah and the palm branch used on the Sukkot and the holiday following Yom Kippur. The Italian inscription on the plaque states, "Here lies Phase the Jew," while the Hebrew reads, "Peace." These symbols express the hope in the national redemption and the hope for the rebuilding of the temple. So it's actually like talking about the rebuilding of the temple, but yet it's in Italy. And it's real interesting that this is a little dragon for the coat of arms for that city too. Okay, we're going to continue. This is the end of part 1, and I'll continue on with part 2. And we're going to continue to move those mountains from here to there and show where they probably were originally at. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you'll stick it out all the way through all of this series, because I think once people realize where things happened and why they happened like they did, that the last video I did on Who's Your Real Father will make a lot more sense. We just praise Father that He's opening our eyes and pulling us out.